friends. Welcome to Coding Garden with CJ. Look at all the drops. Welcome to Morning Tea with CJ, where you can ask questions and I will try to provide answers. Shout out to Valter, who has a 98.73 on the leaderboard. Great work. Great work, everyone. Let's say hello to everyone. And also, if you would like to ask questions, you can go to qa.coding.garden. However, there are already a lot of questions here, so we're most likely just going to pick from the ones that have already been asked, but I am going to respect the number of votes. So if you do ask a new question and it gets more votes, I might actually answer that one beforehand. So you can go here, you can ask new questions, you can vote on existing ones, and if you do vote on existing ones, that'll help me choose which one to answer. But let's say hello to everyone. Hello, Ben. Hello, Valter. Hello, Ronnie. Hello, VJ. Hello, Mahidra. Hello, Nauman. Hello, Kun Chris. Talking about revenge. Probably the drops bouncing into each other. And bonjour, Julian. Hello, Adam. Hello, Depopam. Hello, this is Tony. Hello, DJ. Welcome. Switch to Twitch. Welcome to the Twitch side. And hello, Matka. Hello, Sean. Good morning, Kun Chris. And hello, Raul. Hello, Ashwin. Thanks for the Twitch follow, Mr. Waffles 2018. Yo, what's up? Nauman says, please make some project with TypeScript and modern React with hooks in the context API. Check out my most recent video. Not the, yeah, only one stream ago, we did that. We weren't using the context API directly, but the libraries we're using use the context API underneath. Cool. Mr. Waffles saw me on YouTube. Very good. Good morning, Ed. Hello. Oh, thank you, Mr. Waffles. Hello, Sternholm Dev. What's up? Hello, Marco. Hello, AWS. Hello, Alana. Sternholm says, I ordered a dedicated server 2 weeks ago. Haven't received it yet. Oh, man. Is that like a server to host at your place of work or at your home? Or you're ordering it to a server farm and they're going to plug it in? I don't know. Hello, Meta. There is no SEO command. Pikachu. Hello, JSP. What's up, Metatom? Metatron. Sorry, not Metatom. Oh, Ed is trying out TypeScript and Gatsby. That's an interesting combination. Ciao, Domenico. What's up? And hello, K-Merc. We're just going to be answering questions today. So if you go to this site, you can ask them. I do ask that if you have questions, you ask them on this site, because it's really hard to manage all of the chats and questions from the chat. So ask them here. People can vote. You can vote for other questions, etc. Good morning, Mattia. Hello. Hello, Kyle Yarazan. Welcome. Hello, Levi. Good morning, Client Telephone. Hello, Ember. What's up, Alka? Well, that might be the Alka bot, but Alka might be here. Hello, Freedy Bugs. This is Tony has a sack of questions, maybe? Hello, Coding Pasta. Ordered a dedicated server. Yeah, like, what year is this? I don't... So the only form of one-on-one coaching I might do is if you become a Patreon patron. So if you go to patreon.com/codinggarden with CJ, there is the tractor level. And if you become a tractor, you get 1 hour of direct video chat with me per month. There's also the tractor on YouTube. So if you go to my YouTube channel and click join, there's a very similar tier that has the same benefit. Well, I guess I can't see it in here. But that's pretty much the only one-on-one coaching I might do, at least right now. And Cal Yarazan, hello. I'm 19 and a German data center. Oh, nice, Sterhome. Sack of questions. Yeah, we'll link it. Q&A.coding. I mean, it is how it sounds. Q&A.coding.garden. Yeah, I mean, someone just pogchamped at $100 an hour. That's cheap. Honestly. And I will mention this. So, like, if you look at some of my past streams, there's the Seedling School front-end project. And I have been giving feedback to people on stream on this. Like, it's been slow going because it takes a while, but if you submit your code here, 6 or 7 people have gotten feedback from me. So it's kind of like one-on-one help, but, you know. Oh, thank you. Yeah, that works. There are a lot of questions. We got to get through them. Oh, nice. DJ just started following my React videos. Very cool. Yeah, no worries, Mr. Waffles. I'm gonna try to figure out ways to do it for people that can't afford it, but the thing is, even this per hour is not what I actually make at my real job. So, yeah. Yeah. Is there actually a different coding garden without CJ? No. It's always just been called Coding Garden with CJ. When I did the rebranding, like if you look on my YouTube channel, when I came up with the new, what do you call it? These logos, in the intro video now just says Coding Garden instead of Coding Garden with CJ. But it's still with CJ, and there really isn't one without CJ. Hello, JJP, welcome. Yeah. And hello, Nurdin Bedevi. I catch you at this time. Yeah, welcome. Yeah, feel free to post your GitHub if you'd like to. Links are allowed. They just must be appropriate. I don't have a Facebook account, no. I have a Twitter account. I tweet there when I go live. But that's about it. I don't really participate in social media that much. I mean, this is technically like social media, but it's kind of weird because I don't know. But you can follow me on Twitter. You can @ me there if you'd like to. Domenico says my stream matched their coffee breaks. That's good. Recommendations for a free CMS? No, mainly I don't have recommendations because I haven't really used any. Strappy is something to check out, but yeah. Coding Garden reality show, noob to job. That might be interesting. I could take an apprentice, and there could be a reality video show that shows them learning. I don't know. And hello, Karan. Welcome. Hello, Code with Dinesh. Yeah. Don't worry, this is legit. Okay. I am a senior developer that works in the United States, so you can look up average salaries for that. We're going to answer questions today, Karam. Yeah. And hello, yes, sir. Yeah, and JJP says, love your condensed videos about function. Appreciate that. Yeah, so I cut it from my live stream, but I thought it was a pretty, it was live. There were mistakes, and we were talking to the chat and stuff like that, but I thought it was a pretty good introduction to, basic functions and expressions versus declarations and, the super basics of arrow functions. The thing is, we can go way deeper on all of these topics, but this was just, super high level. But, yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. Can I check out your latest project? Not today, but maybe on another stream. And hello, Heck. Welcome to the show. Karan has a Facebook account just to log into the dev portal. I did that a while back, but I still don't use it. Is this a Rickroll? I'm not going to click that YouTube link. I appreciate it, Infi. Ricky is here. Things like the drop game and the feed you have on screen, are those videos on your YouTube? Yeah, so if you go to coding.garden/videos, it's probably the easiest way to search across my YouTube videos, but just search for, overlay. And so this is the stream where I initially built this overlay over here. And then there's streams where I built the drop game that you see here. There's also the members overlay. I think I'll go ahead and show that. So shout out to all my patrons and members. Coding Garden is brought to you by viewers like you. And here they are. They'll come up. Yeah, I don't quite make 200K, but when you consider that my job provides insurance and different things like that, it's pretty close to that. Yeah, so all these wonderful people support me on, the first up, it's the YouTube supporters, and then you'll see all the Patreon supporters. But I built this thing on stream as well. PlayStation versus Xbox. I don't own either or really play either. Nintendo Switch, that's my answer. Code Padawan. That's not bad. I like that, Mattia. Like a coding apprentice. I believe there are like programmer reality shows. I feel like it's a thing already. I see. What do I think about paid fonts? If they're good, pay for them. Somebody had to work hard to make them. Yeah. I'm not familiar with average salaries in Europe. Crying in Eastern Europe. Cool, yeah. So again, shout out to all my patrons and members. We might code something in Vue. There's a question on the Q&A that has to do with Vue, so we might do that. But why? Because I'm busy. I didn't mean to make you sad, Mr. Waffles, but there's a lot of people watching. There's going to be more people tuning in once the YouTube and Twitch notifications make their way across the intertubes of the interwebs. So we gotta answer questions. I love the fact that there were mistakes in the video. Cool. Have you made an Ajax tutorial? I really need it. So I did make a fetch tutorial. If you look at again, that coding.garden/videos, and search for fetch. Yeah, API request with JavaScript and fetch. So fetch is not XML HTTP request, but it works in a very similar way, and it's the more modern way of doing things. But you can check out this video, API request with JavaScript and fetch, and adding elements with the JavaScript DOM. It's pretty basic though. Like if you're dealing with an API that is just like GET request, it's pretty easy with fetch. Yeah. It's a rickroll. Oh, thanks. Yeah. So the other night we were talking about like just understanding asynchronous JavaScript and like promises and async await and set timeout and stuff like that. And so there are two really good videos on YouTube about event loops, and Client Telephone recommends them. So that's good. There are Twitch specific streams which are totally invisible on that videos page since it just does YouTube. I re-upload to YouTube. Pretty much any stream that was Twitch only, I've re-uploaded to YouTube, so it should be there. Workers. We maybe could do that. If you ask it on the Q&A site, we might do that. Hello, Kimmerk. We're just right now, we're catching up. We're 16 minutes into the stream, so we're just saying hello. Everybody's filtering in, and then we're going to start answering questions. And we're going to try to write some code while answering the questions as well. And good morning, Danielle. Welcome. I'm sorry, Mr. Wobbles. Hopefully, answering these other questions will make you feel better. And hello, Jules Kibbo. Hello, Cactus Sims. Welcome. Rare Parrot. Oh. Well, is that a better Twitch TV emote? Maka says, I switched from legal to work in developments, and I'm so glad to being in that kind of community of developers. Yeah, it's great. I'm glad you're here hanging out with us. Writing code is fun. Good morning, Ton. Where to start data structures and algorithms. Okay, we'll hold on to this question. Feel free to ask it on the Q&A website as well so people can vote on it. But we'll keep going. And hello, Erwin. Welcome to the show. It's a Franker face? Maybe it's like a lowercase r? I don't know. Tips to keep motivated doing projects. Do things that interest you. That's about all I can say, honestly. So many people ask questions like this, like how do I stay motivated? I don't know. I don't have good advice for that. I'm sorry. All right, let's go ahead and get into it so we can start writing some code. And from now on, I'm just going to be watching the chat on the right-hand side. So if I miss something, please feel free to send that message again. But we're going to get into this. Let's go. Excuse me. And before we truly get into it, I'm going to take a drink of water. Yeah, all those questions were by Pranjal. And I am gonna be fair. And so the other thing to note about this website is if you log in and you are a YouTube member or you're a patron, your question actually does go up to the top. So that's why Pranjal's is up here with 3 votes, whereas some of these others might have more. Like this one has 4 votes. Because any of these you see with the droplet icon are YouTube members. But this one just got an extra vote, and it was asked a while back. So I think we'll talk about this one first. This will be fun. So Pranjal is asking, Please teach us about call, apply, and bind in JavaScript and its use cases while building real-world things. Well, I don't know about use cases. I mean, it absolutely is useful, and you should know how to do it. But I think at least in this unplanned, we're just going to try to figure out some code examples right now. I can talk about call, apply, and bind, what each of them do. I think there was another question about the this keyword. Yeah, and this is very similar. I'm gonna talk about both of these at the same time. Excuse me. All right, let's get going. I have VS Code open here. Let's create just a new directory. We might come up with multiple examples. We'll call this call, apply, and bind. New file, index.js, and let's do it. Yeah, so, well, no, I just closed it. That's not a good thing. So, first thing we're going to do is we are going to pull up the Mozilla Developer Network, so MDN. These are like the unofficial documentation for JavaScript and ECMAScript. So, let's look up call first. And which one is it? It's most likely function.prototype.call. Unofficial. Yeah. So Mozilla Developer Network, they might have somebody that sits on the seat of the World Wide Web Consortium, but like the official documentation, and also like so there are different bodies that handle different things. Technically, this would be like the ECMAScript body. So the official documentation for this would actually be the ECMAScript standard, but that's not very developer friendly. So yeah, I call this the official. Yeah, and so there are contributions by like it's a wiki. Anybody can contribute, but it is maintained by the Mozilla Foundation, so they make sure that stuff stays up to date and such. Yeah, let me catch up really quick. Yeah, var that equals this, function this, that stuff equals that. Time to put on my learning hat. I think people like the Firefox JavaScript console. I don't know. I don't use it, but cool. All right, so function.prototype.call. The call method calls a function with a given this value, arguments provided individually. So we'll talk about call. Let's just link to it for now. And then there's also function.prototype.apply. And this calls the function with a given this value and arguments provided as an array. So there's that. Zoom out a little bit. And then lastly, there is bind. And all of these do similar things because they change the this value of a given function invocation. Maybe not necessarily the function invocation. We'll talk about that in a second. So the bind method creates a new function, right? So this one is a little bit different from call and apply because call and apply will invoke a function, whereas bind creates a new function with a new this value. And we'll show what that means in a second. Okay, so where does this come into play? Usually it's when you're doing kind of like constructor functions or really even the class keyword. But we're gonna use just basic functions for now. In a little bit, because it was asked, and it's somewhat related, the question about can you throw some light on the this keyword in the context of the arrow function? So arrow functions have lexical this, so we can talk about that as well. But first, let's just create a function. Let's say this is classic example. It's a dog, and it has a name. And this dog, we're going to basically create a constructor function. This is similar to like if you were to use the class keyword, but this is the old way of doing it. This is a good boy. Dog is good boy. Actually, we could pass it in as a parameter. So is good boy. And that will depend. So what we can do is we're going to set some some instance properties. Now, right now I'm going to use the this keyword. In a second, we're going to talk about what this does. But I'm going to say this.name equals name. And this.isGoodBoy equals isGoodBoy. And right now, that's all that's going to happen. And so this is known as a constructor function because it's you can think of it like a blueprint for creating new dogs, right? So we can create new dogs all day long with this code. And I like that Acid Spark. Is good boy should default to true. We'll do that because most dogs are good boys. I mean, though this is like extra syntax. If you're totally new to all of this might look weird. But basically, if we create a new dog and we don't pass in a second argument, it's going to be a good boy. All right, let's create a few dogs. So we have Fido. We're going to say new dog. And so this syntax here, new, will essentially create a new instance based on the this keyword that's being used. So you'll notice that this function takes in two arguments, name and isGoodBoy. I'm just going to pass in the name Fido. And then isGoodBoy should be true by default. Now, if we log Fido, we're going to see an object that has two properties, name and isGoodBoy. Is that an SVG? Oh, no, it's a font face. Nice, nice. Very good. All right, and let's just run this code really quick. I'm gonna use Quokka to run it inside of the editor. But when we log Fido, you can see that it says the word dog here, but when we log it, it still just looks like an object, right? It's just an object with a couple of properties on it. So the this keyword, in the simplest terms, is really just an object. And what it allows us to do is reference that particular instance. So Let's do this. Not only are we going to add properties here, we're going to add some functions that we can use that are on this particular dog. So what I'm also going to do is say something like this dot get name is going to be a function that just returns this dot name. And actually, this is where it might make sense to use an arrow function, but this will get interesting actually, because this is actually where we could use bind. Okay, so not only are we adding properties on here, we're adding functions too. So let's see what happens if we log fido.getName. We get back Fido, and ultimately this function is being bound to this outside of here, right? So think of these as like two different areas. Like anytime you create a new function with the function keyword, you potentially have a new this, but depending on how that function was invoked, it may or may not have a new this. And so in this particular scenario, JavaScript is binding the this to be the outside this, the this that's outside of the function. So when I return this dot name inside of here, I'm actually accessing the name that got set up above. Cool. So that's great. Just as an example, let's create some more doggies. We're going to create Frida. Has the name Frida. And then we're going to log Frida. And we're going to log Frida.getName. Cool. So this dog constructor here is a way of creating new objects. And we're using the this keyword to hold on to instance properties. And by instance, I mean a new version of that thing. So Fido is an instance of a dog. Frida is an instance of a dog. And inside of our functions here, when we're accessing this, we're accessing that particular instance. So it's useful if you want to create reusable things and then just reference things using the this keyword. We could say that Frida is not a good boy. Really, we should be a little bit more correct about this and just say is good, because it could be a good girl too. Let's rename it. Is good. And then we're going to rename the instance property as well. And so Frida is good. All right, someone come up with we could add other properties too, right? Like, is it a boy? What's a dog name for like a really bad dog? A really bad dog that's not a good boy. Wouldn't it be better to create a dog class? I wouldn't. It's not better. It's just different. There's literally no difference. We're gonna try to remain non-political. All right, we got Jerry. We're gonna go with Cujo. Yeah, Cujo. New dog. His name is Cujo, and we're gonna pass in false. So when we log Cujo, is good is false. Yeah, you're right. Like, he wasn't in control of the fact that he was not a good dog, but That's neither here nor there. So we're going to get his name, and it's also Cujo. Cool. So first, let's actually talk about... Actually, no, we'll use call. We're going to use call, because call will make this a little bit interesting. Snoop Doggy Dog. Cool. So we see that the dog here has this function called getName. And what we possibly could do, and what we can see right now is when I say Fido.getName, we see Fido. And when I do Frida.getName, we see Frida. And when I do Cujo.getName, we get Cujo. But in JavaScript, you have the ability to change the this keyword. So right now, this is bound to the this of the instance, like this outside this, inside that function. But we can change that. And let's actually do that first with call. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to log. We're going to call Fido.getName. But before we do that, we're gonna bind it. So I'm gonna say Fido.getName bind, and I'm actually gonna bind it to Cujo. So that will return us a new function. It's gonna give us a new function, this, where the internal this value is actually bound to Cujo, to this object, instead of the other object. And so one of the key differences between bind and then Collin Apply, bind returns a new function. So you can see right now when we're logging it, it's a function. It's not, we have to actually invoke it. So this gives us back a new function, and if we invoke it, what do you think is going to happen? What do you think? What will get logged right here when I invoke this function? And so it's saying bound. That's just Quokka knows these things. It knows that the function is bound to some other this value. So let's say bound function, and we're gonna put it in a variable. Kuhn says it's gonna be Cujo. Aldous says it's gonna be Cujo. I think it's gonna be Cujo too. So because we took that function, even though it belongs to Fido, and we bound it to Cujo. So when it gets invoked, the this inside of it is gonna be Cujo, and Cujo.name is Cujo. So let's do this, and we see Cujo. Yeah. And hello, Lindo. Yeah, it has been a while. Welcome, welcome. I'm doing pretty good. So that's the first function, bind. So bind changes the inner this value, and it returns a new function. So you'll notice that I stored it in a variable and then invoked it on the next line, but now it's a pre-bound function. So I can call this function all day long, and because we bound it ahead of time, it's always going to give us back Cujo. Now, let's look at Collin Apply. And the other thing is, you don't necessarily have to store it in a variable. Like, with JavaScript, the result of this expression is a function, which means we can then bind it, right? We can do that. Yeah. You can bind functions that use the function keyword and access this inside of them. So one thing I'll show you really quick is you can bind it, but let's say we're not going to bind it to Cujo. We're going to bind it to something else entirely. So instead of passing in Cujo, I'm just going to pass in an object where the name is Ed. And now, what are we going to get back? Let's put it in a variable. Another bound function. When we invoke this, what are we going to get back? And yeah, and it's not copying Cujo, it's a reference. We're passing in the reference to the this keyword. So when this function gets invoked, and actually we could do this, we could actually just log this, and we can see that it gets invoked with Fido, then Frida, and then after that, the this is Cujo every single time because we bound it to be Cujo. Yeah, and so it doesn't have to necessarily be a instance of a dog. JavaScript is very loosey-goosey, and so as long as the object we bind this to has a name property, it'll still work. So if we actually pass in an object with the name Ed, and then we invoke another bound function, we're gonna see Ed. Yeah, and if we log the this value, you're gonna see that on that very last invocation, the this value is actually just a simple object with the name Ed. So it's very dynamic. We're not gonna rob you, Zach Gamer. We're nice people here. So yeah, so this keyword is kind of just an object. You can bind it to be other instances, you can bind it to be other objects, and ultimately when you bind it, it's going to change how the code works internally. So the practical uses, the main one I can think of is React. So in React, and probably like the older style of React where you're creating class components, when you're updating state, you have to say this.setState. And binding also comes into play when you're dealing with DOM events. So whenever an event for a specific DOM element is fired, the this value is actually bound to be the element. So yeah. Yeah, and so right now we're just talking about bind. That returns a new function. We can talk about these other two, which don't return new functions. They just invoke them immediately and change the this value immediately. But that's one of the main things that I can think of. And yeah. Yeah, and actually, just because we're here, we'll show this with the class syntax as well. So in JavaScript, this is known as the a constructor function, and before we had the class keyword, this is what we needed to do. But we can also use the class keyword. Create class dog, and then it has a constructor that looks like that. And all this code should work in the same way, but ultimately we're using the class keyword instead. Now, you can see that I left the function inside of the constructor because those are actually the functional equivalents. Though, when you're using the class keyword, you might actually see it like this. And then this just returns this.name. And so we're not reassigning it right here. The main difference here is that this function actually gets put on the class prototype. So all of our code should still work the same, but the functionally equivalent way of doing that with a constructor function is to change the prototype. So let me show that. So instead of assigning getName inside of the function, what we can do afterwards is say dog.prototype.getName equals a function that then returns this.name. Our code should still work. But ultimately, what we've done here is we've created a shared function. So now every single instance is going to share this same getName function, but each one is going to be bound in a different way. Whereas with this, we're actually creating a new function for every single dog instance that we create. Now, this is getting confusing. I'm talking about too many concepts, honestly. But to see these two things compared, this is how you do it with class syntax. This is how you do it with a constructor function. Ultimately, what we're talking about right now is changing the this value of the function itself. Okay? Okay? This is getting messy, but ultimately, hopefully you learned at least like one thing. Let's say it functions this, that, arrow functions, bind, apply, and call. Yeah. And hello, Nafto. Welcome back. Hello, JFellyWeb. Deepson says JS supports too many programming paradigms. It does, but honestly, you kind of just need to pick the ones that work for you and then get going on that. Please use class instead of in constructor functions in 2020. Sincerely, a person that has to update all code bases. For sure. So since we're doing that, and not to confuse people, we're just going to use the class syntax. But it still works in the same way, because ultimately, this is creating a method that's going to be pre-bound to the instance itself. So we get Fido, Frida, Cujo, but then we can change that bound instance, right? That's the main thing so far. Yeah, and I think your question's on Q&A, so I might have a chance to look at that, Pranjal. There's two different questions. There's one about this, and then there's one about call, apply, and bind. Okay, so we showed bind. Bind creates a new function with a pre-bound this value that you can then invoke at a later time. Let me just write that out. Bind creates a new function with a pre-bound this value. It can, this function can be invoked at a later time. So like I mentioned, it literally returns a new function, then we can invoke it later. And thanks for the follow, Kimima Rocks. Welcome. I'm using a thing called Quokka.js. And thanks for the YouTube sub, David. Yeah, Quokka. Yeah, that's it. Quokka.js. Okay, we'll post it on the Q&A project just so I don't forget. Okay, so that's bind. Now there are these other functions which are similar. They change the this value. So we talked about bind. Let's talk about call. Now let's do a similar thing. We're going to invoke Fido's getName function, but we're going to use the call keyword. So we're just going to log it. We're going to say fido.getName.call. And the call function calls a method substituting another object for the current object. So when you use call, the first parameter is the this value. So what do you want to change the this value to be? So I'm going to change this value to be Cujo. And then you can see that it gets invoked, and it's now actually logging Cujo. So call will invoke the function right now, but change the this value when it invokes it. And actually, apply is very similar. And for this particular scenario, because our function doesn't take in any parameters, they're actually both going to work in the exact same way. So if we do fido.getName.apply Cujo, they still work in exactly the same way. But where the difference comes in with call and apply is when your function actually takes in arguments. That's where it's different. But ultimately, they just invoke the function with a new this value. So we saw that when we created a new function, it like pre-bound it. This will just invoke it. It doesn't create a new one. It just invokes the function and changes what this is going to be for that one invocation. That's what both call and apply do. But now let's look at a scenario where they're actually different, and that comes down to arguments in a function. And for this, I'm actually not going to use classes like this. I'm going to use like a string. So let's say I have the string hello world, like that. And I want to use a function that's only exists on arrays, like map. Like let's say I want to map over all the characters in this string. Now, typically, what you see a lot of people do in JavaScript is first you like split it, which turns it into an array, or you could spread it into a new array, and then ultimately you're going to get back an array that has all of the letters that are inside of that string. But what if I don't want to do that? Because that actually is a little bit of extra work, right? We have to take this string and convert it into an array. But what if I wanted to call map on just a string directly? This is where we could use either call or apply. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say, let's just create an empty array, right? And all arrays have like a map function on them, right? So you could create any array and it has this map function. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to create an empty one so that I get access to map. And then I'm going to call map using the string as this keyword. So I'm going to say map.call, and then the this of the map is going to be the string. And then we get an array of arguments. No, actually, apply is an array of arguments. So then we can actually pass in our map function. So this is going to get access to each individual letter. And we're just going to return letter.toUppercase. Now, this is a bit of a pointless map because we could have just called toUppercase on the whole string. But this is now going to give us an array where each letter is uppercase. Let's zoom out a little bit. If we log result, we get an array where each letter is uppercased. Now, look what happened here. So remember, call will take in an object that it's going to change this value to. So call takes an object, and when it invokes that function, the this inside of it is changed. Now, what we've done here is we're calling map, which is a function that's built into the array prototype, and we're changing the this value to be this string. So now when that function gets called, instead of inside of it this being the array, this is going to be the string. And then we can do whatever we want, like as if it were actually an array. And again, like if you don't know what map is, so DeepSense is mentioning they're unclear what map does. So map is a function you can call on an array that returns a new array. You don't really have to worry about that. The main thing that we're doing right here is we're changing the this value of the map so that it works with a string instead of an array. Another way to do this, instead of creating an instance of an array, is to directly access that prototype function. So we could say array.prototype.map and then call it like that. And technically, we could do that with the dog as well. So if we did dog.prototype.getName and then call that with Cujo, we're still gonna get Cujo logged. Ultimately, because we're using class syntax, this function gets put on the prototype, meaning it can be accessed from the prototype. So we can either access it from the prototype or we can access it from the object itself. CJ is my prophet. Thank you. Yeah, so we could call it from an instance. So when you do square brackets, that's actually like an array literal that creates an instance of an array. But we don't necessarily need to create an instance. We could just directly get that function from the prototype and then use call to change this value. Yeah. The extension I'm using is called Quokka. I'll show it really quick because a lot of people are asking. Quokkajs.com. And this will run your code inside of the editor. It's pretty cool. There it is. Coon Chris says, CJ is like that old friend of mine with that incredible wisdom, but without the anger defect. That's funny. Thank you, the Codfather. Why do we need to bind functions in the constructor? Specifically for React, that's like a whole nother thing, but ultimately it comes down to the functions that are used in the DOM are either not bound or are bound to the element itself. Mandarin? I don't know what MCU is. Okay, and then the main difference between call and apply is call will accept many arguments. So if a function takes in multiple arguments, you can just keep passing them in one after another, and it's going to basically spread those arguments into the function invocation. If you use apply, it accepts an array. So we can look at their documentation. What just happened? There we go. So apply works in a very similar way, but it takes an array of arguments instead of just arguments themselves. So if we wanted to do the same thing on the map with apply, we'd have to do this. So we could say array.prototype.map.apply. This should actually break because we need to pass it an array. So instead of just passing it the arguments as the next parameters, we pass in an array like that, and it should apply it. What has happened? Let's kill Quokka really quick. I'm actually going to run this code with Node and see what happens. Oh, I'm reassigning a const. Let's call this the apply result. Hey, stop trying to rickroll me. Call result. Cool. So this one, it works in a very similar way, but it just accepts an array of arguments instead of just all of the arguments separated after each other. What is this? Is this like a wizard? I don't know. Rest in pepperonis. Lindo says, CJ seems like a very wise, and he seems very zen and happy. Besides coding, would you teach us how to be happy as well? I don't know how. I don't know. I've lived a decently long life and had experiences. I don't know. I'm not a prophet. I'm not somebody you should look to. I don't know. I'll teach you to code. That's about it. Oh, the Mandarin from Marvel CU. I see. Okay, so this actually was probably pretty confusing for people that didn't even know what map was. But let's show another thing. Let's actually create a function that calculates the number of dog years, or the number of years a thing has been alive, or something like that. So like get years, and then it has like probably a multiplier. And we're gonna return. So let's say by default, like this dot age is equal to 1. Well, actually, we could do this. We could also pass in an age. So we're going to pass in an age that defaults to 1. But you also could change the age of the dog. And then get years can be invoked, and it will return this dot age times the multiplier. And let's say get dog years. And the multiplier defaults to 7, because it's something like 1 dog year is like 7 human years. So internally, it has the age stored as just the number of years. But then when you say get dog years, it'll multiply it by 7. Let's watch that happen. Let's do that like right here. So if I just log fido.getDogYears, well, not Fido, and we'll start up Quokka. It returns 7. So all of the dogs are defaulting to 1-year-old because we did that. Let's change their ages. So Fido, he's a 5-year-old. Frida, she's only 3. And Cujo is 10. No, he's actually 6. Cool. So they have... This is the Star Wars crawl. I actually went and saw Star Wars at the movies last night. That's pretty funny. That's great. Do you change the constructor calls? No, I didn't. So I added the default param there. So now we needed to change that they actually have an age when we invoke it. Yeah. So now we're going to we're going to look at Collin Apply in reference to this get dog years function. So by default, if I called it get dog years on Fido, Fido is how old is Fido? 5. 5 times 7 is 35, so we get back 35. But what we could do is we could take that function and change the this value and potentially change the arguments that are invoked with it. So if we use call, so I could say fido.getDogYears call, we're going to call it with Cujo, and by default now this value changed to be 6, to have the 6 years old, so 6 times 7 is 42, but we can actually change the arguments that get passed in as well. So instead of defaulting to the multiplier 7, we could have a multiplier of 3, and that's going to be changed there. So ultimately with call, you can just pass in you can pass in your arguments and they just get passed in like that. But with apply, they actually get passed in as an array. So if I do getDogYears.apply, you can see it's getting an error because I actually need to pass in the arguments as an array. So that's the main difference between call and apply. The extension's called Quokka. Yeah, you guys got it, Quokka. And hello, Kajoma, welcome. The Mandarin. Prototyping is like making a class in JavaScript. So we have a class here. But in JavaScript, it uses prototypical inheritance, meaning there's a prototype chain of functions. And right now, the class keyword is hiding the fact that these functions actually get put on the dog prototype, and every instance inherits from that prototype. Yeah. Real world example. This is as real as it gets, at least for now. I'm coming up with these examples off the dome. If I had more time to prepare, I could find something real. Yeah. Yeah, I am working from home today. Can you make properties private in JavaScript? My guess is no. You can, and you do that just using closures. What you testing? Did you think you potentially had an exploit for DOM Purify? Yeah, and there is a proposal for private fields, which will let you do something like, I think it's this. Yeah. The difference between bind, apply, and call in jQuery.proxy. I'm not familiar with jQuery.proxy. Yeah. And hello, Ultrindo. It's not quite the weekend for me yet. I do have to work today. Oh, okay, cool. I made it so that you could change, ultimately I defined this function so that you can change the multiplier. So I don't know if everyone uses 7 years for dog years, and ultimately what we did down here is we changed the multiplier to be 3 instead of 7. That's ultimately why I did it, so we can actually change the arguments, because I wanted to demonstrate that with apply and bind. I took the 5-hour pre-license course, and the screensaver on the TV was like the DVD logo, and I think I saw it hit the corner. Great work, Andrew. Use TypeScript and you have the access modifier. Ultimately, when it compiles into JavaScript, which it has to, and it's going to, it's using a closure, and probably the revealing module pattern. Take chat to work today. Yeah. Could I explain public and private? I've never done any C# or anything like that. So ultimately, I will tell you this. So anything that we put on this is actually publicly accessible. So even though I've only been calling the functions, technically we could do something like just log cujo.name, and that's going to give us back the name. Or if I log cujo.age, and that's going to give us back the value. So these are technically public properties because we can access them from the outside world. If we wanted them to be private, we'd have to do something else. So basically, and making them private would not allow us to access those properties directly from the outside world. Yeah. I will show you the DVD logo. dvd-logo.now.sh, yeah. Okay, and Kuhn Chris is mentioning that jQuery.proxy is similar to apply. And there's the DVD logo for anybody that wants to load it. Let's see really quick. Just a second. Okay, we talked about that for a while. I wasn't that prepared, so it might have been pretty convoluted and even more confusing for a lot of people. So we can talk about it later too. Just ask me questions about it later. Though I do want to touch really quick on arrow functions. And hello, Bob. Welcome to the show. So right now, all of the functions that we've defined, we've been using the function keyword. So when we defined it as a constructor function. Oh, thank you. I'll do. AML. Ask me later. Okay. But for this constructor function, we use the function keyword, and also for this class, we use the function keyword. But let's actually do this. What I'm going to show you. So here's what we're going to do. Instead of defining the functions getName and getDogYears as prototype methods, we're gonna add them directly to the prototype. So I'm going to say this.getName equals this function. Sorry, we're not adding them to the prototype, we're adding them to the instance. And this.getDogYears equals a function. Does this. Okay. So now, all of our functions should still work, and all of our binding and applying should still work because we're using the function keyword. So right here, we bound Fido's getName function to Cujo, and when we call it, we're getting back Cujo. Here we bound it to an object with the name ed, and we're getting back ed. Here we're calling it with Cujo. Oh, and now, because we put them on the instance instead of the prototype, you can see that we can't say dog.prototype. That doesn't work anymore because the functions are no longer on the prototype. The functions are now on the instance instead of the prototype. So that was broken. But everything else works in the same way. And these are just extra examples that we don't need to worry about. But watch what happens if I change these to arrow functions. And this is where lexical this comes into play. And can anyone in the chat tell me what's going to happen? Because I changed these to arrow functions, what is the result? What is this? What is the implication? And hello, Abdelhamid. Hello, Ben Aaron Dummer. Welcome, everyone. Anyone? Any guesses? Yeah, so the main thing, I think Chris has it, because I changed these from using the function keyword to be an arrow function, this actually is a good demonstration of lexical this. This might be, it's going to make it harder. This might actually drive home for a few people the fact that arrow functions have lexical this. Okay, so let's just reiterate. We're using the function keyword, which means we can use bind. So we can use bind to change the this value, right? We can change the this value all day long. We can use call, apply, etc. However, if we change these to use arrow functions, and I'll write them just separately. Arrow functions do not allow you to change the this value. So ultimately what will happen, I don't know if we'll get an error by calling call or apply, call, apply, or bind. But ultimately, if we don't get an error, the this value is not going to change because arrow functions have lexical this. Arrow functions use the this value of the surrounding code. And the surrounding code here is the instance itself. So whenever this instance is Fido, this refers to Fido, which means inside of the function, this is always going to refer to Fido. There's no way to change it. So there's that. Now, let's see what happens. Do we get errors or do we just are we never allowed to change the this value? Yeah, and so we can see here, even though we created a new function, which we bound to Cujo, because it belonged to Fido and because it has lexical this.name is always Fido. This always references Fido. It can never reference anything else. And so if we try to change the binding to be ed, we still get back Fido. If we try to change get name to Cujo, we still get back Fido. If we try changing the this value here, we don't change the this value, but we do change the arguments that get passed in. So it is possible to change the arguments. If we leave those off, we'll still get back 35. So it's possible to change the arguments, but we're not changing the this value. This is just being completely ignored for this particular scenario. So this is what we mean by lexical this. We can't change the this value, and it uses the this value of the outside code. And mainly, like, this is why arrow functions are so popular, because they're less confusing, right? Because with functions, isn't name in our... No, so name is using this. It's coming from here. It's still using the instance, this.name, this.age. And so before, we were able to change the this value to be a totally different object. And whereas now, we can't change it. And so this is why this idea of lexical this, it's a bit easier to think about. It's a bit easier to read your code because the this value can never change. You always know that it's going to be the this value of the surrounding code. Yeah. And see you later, DJ. But yeah, so you cannot modify the this value, and this value always refers to the code that's surrounding it. That's lexical this, the lexical scoping. Yeah. And mainly that's why it was introduced, is because it's a lot less confusing, honestly, because with the function keyword, it depends on when and where the function was invoked, and it depends on if the this value was changed. And Coon Chris is saying you can change the this value. I just cannot pass a different this, right? I don't think so. So Aldi was asking, what is a function that's bounded then? Isn't it the same as with arrow functions? No, so whenever we bind a function, let's go back to using the function keyword. Like this. Whenever we bind a function, we're getting back a pre-bound function. So right here, we're getting back a function that has changed what this value is going to be. Because before binding it, this was Fido. This was the actual instance. But then we bound it to the instance Cujo. So now we have a new function with a new inner this value. We can change this dot real age to this dot age times the multiplier, and it will reflect on the object. Sure. I mean, technically we can overwrite age, yeah. But it still doesn't change the this value. That would just change the inner property, and that would change how this function gets invoked. But inside of this arrow function, this would still be the same thing. And hello, Mohammed. Okay. I think we've talked about this for a very long time. I'm gonna stop talking about it now. Hopefully it was interesting. And it may not have taught you everything, but it will get you down the path. So now when you see call, apply, and bind, they may not seem as scary. You can try to understand them, but yeah. We can change things within the this object, but we cannot replace the this reference like we did with call, apply, and bind. Yes, absolutely. And that really has nothing to do with binding of the functions. That's mainly the fact that these are public properties, and we can just modify them all we want. I've made thousands of dollars without this wicked concept. Yeah, I mean, you could write JavaScript without ever knowing this, but you also can know it too, and it's fun to know things. And thanks for the YouTube sub, Michael Anti. Welcome. Okay, that was interesting. I don't know. I talked about it for a long time. Let's talk about another one. Let's see. Karan is asking, can I show how workers work in node.js? I think we're gonna let's see. I think we're gonna jump to the non-members questions. Yeah, call, apply, and blind all do similar things. They change the this value. Stern Home Dev is saying, I think you might know the answer to this. If no legal bound document or contract has been signed for the code you made for a specific company, would you be able to reuse the code for another company, or will it be legally owned by the first company because of payment? I honestly have no idea. Consult a lawyer. I have no idea. I see. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so we're gonna skip the members questions. We're gonna jump to this question from Amy, and then we will potentially jump back to a member question. What the heck is an observable? Is it like a promise? No, sort of, not really. Let's talk about it. So, observables, you could mean different things by observables. So observables were potentially going to get added to the JavaScript or to the ECMAScript standard. Excuse me. But then it got scrapped. We can look up JavaScript observable. But there's also another meaning, and I think that, yeah, these are older articles from when observables were almost going to be a thing. I think. Yeah. So you could have created an observable that watches for changes on a particular object, like it can subscribe to changes. I think this is it. Object observer. Yeah, so this is now obsolete. So this is one thing that you might be talking about when you're talking about observables, object.observe, but it's no longer a thing. Ultimately, this would have been something where you could pass in an object and then listen for when changes happen to that object, but this is no longer a thing. What I think you're talking about, because you compared them to promises, are something that's from like RxJS, reactive programming, observable, which is used heavily like in Angular. I believe this is what you're talking. Is this what you're talking about? Amy. Yeah, there also is Mutation Observer, which is used for DOM stuff. There were a lot of issues with why they didn't add it. I'm not going to get into why they didn't add it, but let's just look at this. Yeah. And actually, I haven't worked much with like RxJS observables, but ultimately, they are like streams of data. Let me see if I can find like a diagram of RxJS observables. Yeah, I want to see diagrams like this. I've seen these before. And they actually make it pretty easy to understand, or easier to understand. Okay, so yeah, if you're talking about it in Angular, then you're talking about RxJS observables, for sure. That's me. Let's jump out to Google, see if we can find anything. Images. Yeah, reactivex.io. Hey, where'd the diagram go? Yeah, okay, I'm just going to answer this really quick because I honestly don't know that much about it. But think about an observable is something that can produce new values, and it can produce new values infinitely. So you could potentially create an observable that is like listening for input events on a DOM element. And the fact that a new input event can come in at any time, like it's never really going to stop, is an observable. So you could set up like an observer on an input, and each input or each like type into that input would call your function because it's observing when new values come in. It's also possible to turn like API requests into observables, because you could basically say like, I'm going to observe this API request, and when it gets back a value, I want to call a function that has the latest value. But you could potentially wrap that code in something that makes multiple requests, and requests often. But every time it gets a new result, it calls your function, which was observing for things to happen. And I would say it's kind of like a promise because it can wait for the result. But the main difference is that promises can only resolve or reject once. Once a promise has been settled, it can't be changed. Whereas an observable could ultimately resolve a value multiple times and still never be done. So you could think of it, yeah, like a watcher is a good way to think about it. DOM's on change, just more obnoxious. No, it's really just, it really changes the way all of your code works together. So instead of even using add event listener, RxJS has their own way of like listening for DOM events. Yeah. That's all I'm going to say about it, because honestly I haven't used it that much. But if this is actually like a common interview question, like what's the difference between a promise and an observable? Observables can be resolved multiple times, meaning you can just keep on pushing values to them all day long, whereas a promise can only be resolved once. But they're similar in that they can wait for a value, and you can give them a function which will get invoked when the value is ready. So yeah. Hello, Nar. Welcome. All right. Let's look at like one more non-member question. I can talk about this one. I am not really gonna be able to show any code, but James is asking, do you have any idea how you would achieve to read an MP3 file and then pipe that out to all listeners on an Express endpoint, like an audio broadcast? I wouldn't actually do this like with Express, because you want to use some sort of streaming music technology like Rtsp or something like that, because typically endpoints in Express are meant to, like, you make the request and then you get back the response. They're not meant to stay open constantly. So you need some way of keeping a persistent connection to the server to potentially get that stream of data. So you might look into like RTSP, real-time streaming protocol, RTSP client, RTSP server, a low-level module for creating RTSP servers. Let's see. So this lets you create a server with JavaScript. You can start the server up. And then you can use something like ffmpeg to pipe this video file into the stream, and then your clients could access that stream from a different port or from that address. But ultimately, it's like a totally different server technology that allows you to like have a client that's constantly listening for media. You could ultimately the media that's being streamed might be an MP3 file, but you're not necessarily just sending them pieces of an MP3 file at a time. Like, so there's that. There's also ways you could potentially fake it. So like you could have an MP3 file stored on a server, like on an S3 bucket or something like that, and then you could have a web page where anybody that goes to that web page, it loads the MP3 file, but then you could have like a main listener that knows what time the file should be in, and every other client could have like a WebSocket connection that gets an update of where they should be in the MP3 file. And then you kind of get like fake streaming because you have multiple people all listening to the same MP3 file, and it's not being streamed, it's just loaded on the page. And then each client would talk to the server to know where they should be at in the time frame and update their audio player based on that. So honestly, if you're going to be streaming, I would use something like RTSP. So yeah, that's a thing. I'll end it there. We answered Pranjal's question already. Let's see if we can answer Karan's question. Show some or explain workers in Node. I think I'll save that for a different stream, mainly because I haven't had a chance to play around with them, but they're basically a way of doing multi-threading in Node.js now. It's a thing. And hello, Percelsior. Welcome. Yep, that's absolutely true, Drills Kibbo. So if you were doing that MP3 file thing where everyone's just listening to the same MP3 file that was downloaded to their browser, but then you have a client that's updating the seek time, then yes, for people that can't download fast enough, it would be like skipping, or it would jump if they don't have a good connection. Yeah. I might do TensorFlow in the future. Yeah. For sure. Let's see. So Karan is saying how to handle Node.js error status codes dynamically. Like Boom gives us the status code with the error, but what if I don't want to use any library, and also I don't want to send the error manually? I know it's a stupid question, but maybe there's some better way than maintaining a file of status codes. I think I kind of need to see a code example to see what you're talking about, but ultimately, that's kind of what you need to do. So basically, what I think you're talking about is you have some backend API, and you're trying to standardize what error codes are used and when those error codes are shown from that API. Instead of just manually putting error codes all over your code base, you want to have like a consistent way of managing those error codes. I think that's what you're asking. If you're watching Karan, let me know if that's what you mean. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so honestly, I think that's the best way to go. So I have used a library called HTTP status, I think it is. Let's see. HTTP status codes? Yeah, I think this is the one that I've used. So this one has all like standard HTTP status codes as constants in a library. So you can import HTTP status, and then you get nice named status codes like HTTP status.ok, that's going to be 200. HTTP status.internal server error, that's going to be 500. So it gives you, at least in your code base, instead of having 200 or 500 sprinkled all over the place, you could say HTTP status dot any one of these, and it's a constant that is set to that particular status code. So this is what I've done in a code base before. And ultimately, like each request handler would decide, and each error handler would decide which status code it would return. But we made sure in code reviews that we were, instead of hard coding the status codes, we were using them from a library like this. So that's one way to do it. And then you might actually have just like one large switch case or one really big if-else statement in your ultimate error handler that decides what to do with the response. So ultimately what you could do is in any particular, you could have a base set of error classes. So you could have like internal server error class, or you could have a gateway timeout error class. And then instead of just doing res.status with this constant, you could throw an error that is of type gateway timeout. And then you could have an express error handler that looks at the type of the error and changes the status code accordingly. That's another way to do it. But what's the best? I don't really know. It ultimately comes down to like, how do you want to structure your code? And let me know, Karan, I'll leave this question up for a second. Let me know if there are other things about this you want to know, or if that kind of helps, or if you had something else in mind. Just let me know. And also, we should check out http.cat, which is cats for all the different status codes. Accepted. Yeah, that helps, but I'm kind of a functional guy. Yeah, so ultimately, you could create a class that extends the built-in JavaScript error type, but then just has a different name, like gateway timeout error or bad request error, and then throw those errors. It's not necessarily functional, though, because you do have to create like error class instances, but in those classes you could predefine the error codes. I don't know. Enhance your calm. Status code 420. Status code 408. No, 418. Is that what it is? Yeah, I'm a teapot. Yeah. What if I don't want to use any library? Use a library, honestly, or like look at the code for this library and write it yourself, because you want to have these constants. Yeah. Karan is saying, so I was trying to find a global way to do it. Suppose I get an error from Joy and then I throw it there. Oh yeah, so you could do that in Express Error Handler. I can show that really quick. Can I show that really quick? I don't know if it's gonna be quick, but we'll do it. Let's do this. Yeah, status picked up dynamically. So let's init this as an npm repo. We're gonna install Express. It's pretty much all we need, just Express. Actually, we'll install Joy as well to show how you can do something custom with the error in an error handler. HTTP cat 450? What does that do? Yeah. So we'll create a new file, index.js. We're gonna have a basic Express app. Yeah, we'll do that. And then app.listen. We're going to be on port 1017. Cool. And we'll just add a basic get route, so when we get slash, we're just going to respond with hello world. Request, response. We'll just say res.json with a message. Hi there. Cool. Let's start it up. We now have a server listening here, and it responds with hi there. That's great. Create a folder named CJ. So basically what I did was I required it in and invoked it all on one line. I'll put it on two. So usually what you see people do is put express in a variable and then invoke it like that. Okay, but what I want to show is a custom error handler. So just real quick, I'm going to set up body parser. So you can do app.use express.json, which will create a JSON body parser. And then let's say we have a route that's like app.post to cats. This is for creating new cats. We're going to do some validations here. And if there is an error, we're going to forward it on to the error handler. We'll comment this out for a second. Let me get an error handler and a not found handler working real quick. Yeah. So many cats. I'm not going to deploy this. It's just as an example. But one thing I'll do is first set up a 404 like not found handler. So I'll say app.use this little middleware right here. And so basically, because this middleware is at the bottom of the stack, if it ever reaches here, I'm going to set res.status code to be 401. And then we'll create an error that is not found. And we forward that on. Not 401, sorry, 404. 909. Why would I do that? Or leet. Cool. So that's our error handler, but then this calls next. So we actually need an, sorry, this is our not found handler. Now we need an error handler, which will capture this thing that was passed on with a new error. And do something with it. So I'll say app.use. This is very similar, but we have multiple parameters. So error, rec, res, and next. We can set the status code. So we'll say res.status, which is going to be res.status code. If it's not equal to 200, then set it to 500. Otherwise, use the status code that was passed in. And then we can just return an error. So like message is error.message. We could potentially show the call stack. Something like that. So now we have an error handler. So if we kill it, restart it, and then we do something like request not found, our error handler gets called. We see that the error message is not found. That's because in our 404, we passed a string message not found. What's happening here? Misdirect request. Yeah. Hello, the Abby. Welcome. And floor it. Yeah. What does next do exactly? It forwards on to the next middleware. So basically, we created a not found middleware right here. Because if our code ever reaches this middleware, then we're actually going to forward on to the error handler. If you call next without a parameter or without an argument, then it just goes on to the next middleware. And that's actually what happens with express.json. So express.json is a custom middleware that will look at the body of the incoming request, parse it, and then call next without any arguments so that it goes on to the next middleware function. But if you call next with an argument, it's going to go on to the error handler, which will then return the error. Yeah. So let's do this. We're gonna have this route app.post cats for creating new cats, and ultimately we want to validate the cat before we allow it to enter. So we're gonna use joy for that. Acquire joy. And then we can create our cat schema. Joy.schema? No, not join. Come on. I need to look at the docs. I don't know how joy works anymore. Oh, you're right. You're right. It's that new at happy/joy. Okay, I gotta install this one instead. Happy, happy, joy. Happy, happy, joy. Here we go. I kind of just want something like this. So now we need to bring it in from @happy/joy. Yeah. So we want our cat schema, which is going to be joy.object. So a cat has a name. That's going to be a string, can only have alphanumeric characters, must be at least 2 characters long, and can be no longer than 10, and it is required. A cat also has an age, which is a number that can be no smaller than 0, like that, and it is required. What else does a cat have? Happy/boom. Okay, I think you mentioned boom, and I didn't really know what you were talking about, but I'll check it out. An attitude? Yeah. Is it an attitude score? Attitude. Is it a number? It's a value between 0 and 10? Maybe? I don't know. We'll go with attitude. How much attitude does it have? And yeah, let me look at Happy Boom. I've never heard of it. HTTP friendly error objects. Excuse me. How does it work? Oh, yeah, cool. Okay. I'm not gonna use it, but makes sense. Okay, so here's what we want to do. Whenever we post a new cat, we want to validate the request body. So we'll say cat schema dot validate. I think, I don't know, rec.body. So we're gonna pass in the request body to validate it. Let's just look at the docs. Joy schema.validate, and that should give me back an object that has an error property. So right now I'm just going to res.json the result just to see what we get. But now let's actually try to use it. Deleted my cat's access token? Yeah. A negative, yeah, so let's do -10 because it could be a very negative cat. -10. Number of lives, I like that. We'll call it lives left. Yeah, minimum is 0. Yeah. See you later, Bob. Thanks for hanging out. Validate async. I'll do that. Actually, this will potentially throw an error, right? I think it might throw an error. And then we could actually call next with the error. Let's see. See if it does. And we'll know if it's an error because the error handler will get called. Why is it in? That's from their. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. It's because it's from their documentation. That's the way they did it. Technically, I could do that. I don't know. I'm not gonna worry about it. If I don't do validate async, I think it still throws an error, right? I don't know. We'll see. Let me hide my screen for a second. I'm going to pull up Postman, and we're going to try to create some cats. Well, I was just thinking, if you have 0 lives left, then that means if you die, you're dead. But if you have 1 life left, you can still die 1 more time before you're actually dead. I don't know. Okay. So we need to make a post request. The max could be, yeah, sure, why not? Lives left? Well, no, I mean, this cat could have stolen lives from other cats. Let's do it. Why not? We're gonna do it. Max is 9 lives. Cats have 9 lives, I think. Okay. Where are we running? We're on localhost 1017. So in Postman, I'm going to make a post request to /cats. And the body of the request is going to be JSON. And it must meet that schema. So let's actually do this. We're going to pass an empty object. Our schema says it needs all these properties. So it should throw an error because it doesn't have any of the required properties. So let's do it. The server is not started. Let's start the server. Joy is not defined. Gotta call it capital Joy. Okay, it started. Postman, we send it. And right now, because we're doing validate synchronous, it didn't actually throw an error, but it did get back an error. So we're going to use the async validation with Trycatch so that it actually throws an error. I believe that's how that works. Let's do it. So we're going to make this an async function, and then we're going to say validate async. And so if it throws an error, it should go on to the error handler. Let's see. It didn't. Oh well, we could say this. Oh yeah, restart the server. Oh, thank you. I should be using nodemon, but yeah. There we go. Nodemon. Did I not add a wait? Oh yeah, I need a wait, sorry. Nodemon. Nodemon. Cool. So you can see that it actually does forward it on to the error handler. Ultimately, what I wanted to show you was in the error handler we can tap into the type of error. So really, so because we get the error right here, that throws, and this is actually of type validation error. And then the error that gets into our error handler we have access to, so we could do special things. So we could do something like this. For now, I'm actually just going to log error.constructor.name. Lamau. So we're going to log what type of error is this thing. So now when I make the request, it should error out, but we should see nothing. We see nothing. All right, I'm going to install nodemon. Nodemon? No, I like to say nodemon. It's kind of like Jamaican. Nodemon. Nodemon. Node daemon. Yeah, node. It's actually like node daemon. But I like to say nodemon. Okay, so we're started up. We try to make the request. It doesn't have a name. Let's just log the error itself. Let's see what we get. All right, we'll make the request. Error validation. Yeah. Oh, well, I guess technically we could just look at the name property, but I feel like it's a custom type. Node monitor? No, it's node daemon. Like a daemon or a daemon is a background process that's always running. That's why their logo is a daemon. No, it's no daemon. Look at it. It's a demon. It has horns. A daemon. A demon. Yeah. So it's both. I think it's both a demon and a monitor. Yeah, that's how Ben Awad says it. Doesn't he say like no demon? I don't know. I like nodemon. Nodemon. It's a monitoring demon. No demon. Thanks for the follow. Inimitable. That doesn't, just because it's a simple script for monitoring doesn't mean it's node monitor. Node mon. Okay, so one thing, basically I just wanted to show in terms of validation, we could say like, if it is a validation error. So like, if error.name is a validation error, we could say like res.statuscode is 421. I think that means like invalid body or something like that. I don't know, but let's see what this does. Res.statuscode is not a function. You're right. It's just a property. Yeah. And that actually didn't work. What is happening? Why are we doing this? I thought it had a name property. Spooky development. (422). Thank you, Sujan. We'll use that error code. The server should have restarted. I'm gonna log error.name. Yeah, Shiftman's gonna be live pretty soon. That'll be fun. This should override it. YouTube raid. Yeah, if we're still live, we'll definitely do a YouTube raid. Sheafman. Nodemon. Sheafman. All right. Sorry. If the res status code equals 200, then we set it to 500. Otherwise, we set it to the one that we wanted. So there we go. 422, unprocessable entity. Yeah. Sheafman. And good morning, Andreas. Welcome. So, I forgot what the question even was. And I think ultimately what I wanted to show... Ultimately, what I wanted to show is the fact that in your error handler here, you can detect what the particular error was, whether you do error.name or error.constructor.name or type of error, and then change the status codes accordingly in this one error handler. So it might make sense to have all of your error checking logic in this error handler that decides what the status code is based on the incoming error, and then throughout your code base you throw different errors. So like ultimately this is throwing a validation error, and so we're setting the status code to 422. You could also customize the response based on the status code. So right now we're just sending back the message name is required, but technically we could send back the details as well. Let's do something like this. We could put result in an object, and then based on the status, or based on the error that happened, we can modify the result. So I could say like result.details equals error.details, like that. And so now the error response, it's still an error response, but it includes extra details that you could potentially use on the front end. Yeah. Sheafman. Who's trying to get around course? Cool. And I think there's like an option in Joy to validate all properties instead of like just stopping on the first one, isn't there? API. Validate. Validate async. Options. Warnings are returned alongside the value. Defaults to false. Do we have no other options? I don't know. Okay, I think that's really all I wanted to talk about. please, Karan, let me know if there's anything else I could help with. I think that Boom library actually does something similar, but this is ultimately what I was getting at, is this error handler function can now look at the type and do different things based on the type. So I don't know. I have not tried Adonis, Paul. Mongo. Okay, let's move on. Oh, cool, Karan. Hopefully that helped. And I will push this code up pretty soon, but, yeah, like, add extra properties if the error is different, that kind of thing. But yeah. All right. Let's actually talk about this really quick. So Brandon is asking, if I wanted to contribute to some coding garden projects, which would be most helpful to contribute to? Anything you've wanted to build out but haven't gotten around to yet? Sort of. Like, ultimately, this Q&A website, this is just the beginning. Like, I want this website to be everything related to Coding Garden. So it should have, like, the live chat on it. I want a way of taking a message that's in the live chat and moving that message into Q&A so people can vote on it. But I really need to, like, architect things first before I open it up to the world to start contributing. Yeah, the community app really isn't going anymore. We kind of need to revamp that. But if you look at Coding Garden community, this was like a totally open source thing where people were contributing to, and there were tons of people that signed up to contribute. But it kind of died out, and there hasn't really been much activity on it. But ultimately, this app is kind of the same thing, but it's really just for people in the community to contribute to. We were planning on having like a forum, a place for seeing all the latest videos and seeing news. It was ultimately, like, it started as React Native. That's what this app mobile is, but then that was a little hard for newer developers, so we started like a Vue.js front end as well. But yeah, this is Coding Garden community. So you could potentially start to contribute there, but it's kind of dead right now. Yeah. This one. I don't know why this was detected as spam. But yeah, honestly, we're not right now. There's not, but I would like to in the future. Like, I would like to have some nice, well documented and well set up and architected projects that other people could contribute to as well. For a while, people were contributing timestamps for my videos. It's not code, but it is a way you can contribute to Coding Garden. I think there a timestamps video? No, I think I called it community contributions. Yeah, community contributions. There hasn't been really any activity on this repo, but the goal of this was so that people from the community could contribute timestamps to my live streams, because my live streams are usually several hours long. Like this one that you're in right now is an hour and 47 minutes long. And so it can help people coming to the stream later on if there are timestamps on it. We haven't had any contributions in a while. But you could potentially submit a contribution for a new video and put timestamps, like this video. You could put timestamps in this video that say, at this time, CJ was talking about call, apply, and bind, and at this time, he was talking about XYZ. But yeah. So there's that. Other than that, not really, but in the future, I do hope that we'll have some stuff like that. Andrew is a verified troll. He's actually a mod of the channel. And what is Andrew doing? Telling me to drink? No, he's allowed to tell me to drink, because I keep forgetting. The font on my Q&A site? Is that what you're saying? I don't think it's too late, Imphy. We just need to revamp it. Yeah. Yeah. Ever plan on building DevTools? Not really, but I might. Hello, Chicken Nuggets. RxJS is a library for working with observables. Verified troll. Yeah. Hello, Garogat. Welcome. Let's see. Whoa. What happened? Yeah, mods are really just verified trolls, ultimately. The differences between the Chrome UI DevTools and DevTools protocol? I have no idea. Flutter is cool. Would you like to set a team of people who spend their time adding subtitles to your videos? That would be cool. There are the automatic translations, so that's a good place to start. But also, I don't know what languages it would need to be translated into. Yeah, I'll try Pranjal, but you do have the majority of the questions on here, so I'm trying to get to other people's questions as well. Yeah. They're very long, yeah. Yeah, it is cool, but I think I want to do a dedicated stream on this so I can have some prepared materials, because right now, we're just chatting. So. Is this another fun one? All right, we'll talk about this one. That's funny. If you could have any superpower, what would you want to have? I'd want the ability to know any random stat about my life. Like how many grapes have I eaten between 2001 and 2007? How many times I've stepped outside, and how many with my life. My superpower would be that I don't have to sleep, and I still feel rested 24/7. So I could literally be awake all the time, never have to sleep. That would be my superpower. I could watch so much TV and also write a lot of code. Time travel. Hello, Shirley Dev. What's up? Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to do a 1Q on next week's Code Kata. That's the plan. Any chance I'd want to demo how to do a text hover overlay on an image in Vue? Yeah, let's do it. This sounds fun. And then I probably have to go. Let's do this one. Perfect recall? That'd be cool. Like a photographic memory. Yeah, like you know absolutely everything that ever happened, and you could recall it perfectly. Okay, so client telephone, please please let me know if this is what you mean. So like we hover over an image, and then text is overlaid on top of that image, and maybe there's like an opaque black background that appears on top of the image. Is that what you're talking about doing? In just a second. Cool. Client telephone says yes. All right, let's do it. And actually, we should get images of, I guess, like random images of cats. Cool. Does place kitten give us random cat images? Placeholder kitten images for cats. Yeah. Like you take the URL and you put like a random dimensions in it, and you'll get back a different cat based on the dimensions. Yeah, or 400 by 500. Yeah, we'll do that. We're gonna use. Does it support HTTPS? Wait, what just happened? It does support HTTPS. The Internet of Cats. Cool. So we're going to make a basic Vue app where on hover, it shows some text. So let's do it. Can I make it lazy loaded? I that would require a little extra. So maybe not. Create image hover. The answer to life. Yeah, we could have that embedded in the source code. It's a definite possibility. Just feature creep him? No, I gotta go to work soon. See you later, Percelsior. Thanks for hanging out. Swiping left. Come on. Actually, I mean, I technically could make it... Well, there's only going to be one image. That's the thing. We don't need view. We really don't need Sass. We just need a basic view app. I guess technically I could have done this without even the CLI. But let's just do this. Yep. It's invisible. Do it in... The question was specifically about view, which is why I'm doing it with view. Working for the Mon. Yeah. And hello, Devopam. Welcome back. This is taking a very long time. There's a view question below? I can't really search in this UI is the thing. In my chat overlay. Okay, so we have a view app. Honestly, I mean, we don't even really need an API request. I don't have Control F in my overlay, though. Is there a way to import a folder of images in one line instead of having to import the images one by one? Yeah, you could use the FS module and then dynamically import them. Let's do this. We're going to create a new folder in here called images. We're going to save. We'll do that. We'll load the images dynamically. This will be fun. And then we will show them on the page with an overlay. Yeah, I'm doing something really quick. Give me a second. Respect me. Respect my time without showing my screen. All right, we'll save that one. Okay, I can show my screen now. Basically, I'm just going to be saving... Respect my privacy. We're going to be showing a bunch of different images. We'll save that one. Save it. Expect that one. CS50 TV is pretty cool. You gotta get like several images in here. Okay, we need a few more. I've never heard of Terminus. I don't know what that is. Okay, so we got ourselves a bunch of we got ourselves a bunch of images. We need some random captions. Can has generator maybe. Meme generator. I can maybe will they all just say I can has cheeseburger? What if they all say something different, like I can has banana, or I can has different, I don't know. Can has ipsum? I can has ipsum. Here we go. Well. I feel like we're straying from the goal of the question. It's got to be good. Cat, or say like kitten ipsum. A furrier lorem ipsum. I really just need one paragraph. Okay, yeah, so we're going to take this and we'll generate random overlay titles from it. It's going to be good. 3 minutes. All right, so we have our view app. We're going to get rid of that. We're going to get rid of the components. We're just going to do it all in this one app component here. And we're not going to have any styles. And right now we're just going to have an h1 that says hello kittens. We'll start it up, npm run serve. Open the browser. Hello kittens. I guess I am building something in Vue today. After this, I'm gonna go though. I have been live for over 2 hours. I'll search terminus later, not right now. Okay, so the first thing is I want to dynamically import all of these images from a folder. Oh wait, it's the same one. Okay, we don't want to have the same one. Look at all those kittens. Okay, so to dynamically require these in, I would actually use the FS module, and I'm pretty sure you could do that in here because it's going to run that at build time. Yeah, so read the directory, and then I'm not going to read the file in. I'm really just going to get the path and then import it in because we're using Webpack. But actually, you could search this, just like Webpack dynamically import directory of images. Require.context. That's the thing that we're looking for. So I could say images equals require.context, and then it takes the path. So I want to go into assets/images. And then you can pass in what things you want, but I think by default it'll just give you everything. And then I'm just going to log images. Let's see what we get. Webpack context. Do I need to do something with it? r.keys.map r. So then I need to do .keys. Yeah, and that actually gives me all of their paths. Cool. So I mean, technically, I could then do yeah, it gives me the paths. Do that. .keys, but actually I want them to have the full path. That's require.context, I'm pretty sure is Webpack specific. Let's look at it. Directory, subdirectories, regular expression. I wanted to keep the full path is the thing. So the second parameter is what is the second parameter? use subdirectories. Well, that can stay false. And then you have a regular expression. Yeah, import all is like this custom function. And for each one, it puts it in the cache. I don't know. I think we can actually just use it. So we have images here. And then on my data for this component, we can just return images. So images gets put on there. And then we should be able to repeat over it, I believe. So let's do this. We'll just have an image. And we're going to repeat it for image in images. The source is going to be bound to the image. And the key will be just the image name, because it doesn't really change. Does this work? Nothing. Oh, Coding Train is live? Cool. We can do an unofficial YouTube raid then. That will be fun. I'm mocking my own emote? What? Yeah, I need to fix this in my overlay. That's kind of broken right now. I'm curious, just really quick, in the mounted, if we log this.images, it should be an array of strings. Oh, am I not doing, oh, I meant to do .keys, that's why. Yeah. I don't like the fact that it actually takes off the initial path, though. That's what I was trying to look at in the docs. They might be live soon. Weird. Regardless, we can't actually, I guess we could technically prepend them. Wait. I guess I technically want the directory to be here. Let's see if I set the context to just be this folder. Yeah, then it gives me a bunch of things. Cool. And then I can use a regular expression to only show me the ones in assets/images. I think that's what I want. Or I could just say .jpg. So I think the third parameter is a regular expression. Regular expression .jpeg. Or just ends with JPEG. Like that. Alright, so now we only get back the images. Cool. Oh, look at that. That's a nice little train emote. So we're getting the images, and then we're referencing them, but it's still broke. Because now if we look at this, it's trying to load from assets images. And you can't find those. Oh. Context. I mean, it doesn't need to go up a directory. I don't know. What's happening here? Yeah, I guess like technically this should make it so that Webpack. Oh, you know what? Do I need to iterate over each one and then actually do the import versus just getting the path? Let's call this like image paths. And then images is going to be image paths dot map. Each path to be requiring that path, like that. Nice. Cannot find module assets images. Well, can I do an import instead of a require? Cannot find module asset images 600 from source. Go up a directory? Yeah. See you later, Karan. Thanks for hanging out. Yeah. Cool. A JS module? I don't know. Technically, I mean... This should work. I don't know why this isn't working. Like with the relative paths. Yeah, I mean, I guess we could use FS. We're trying to dynamically import an array of images. And at this point, we sort of got that. Let's look at what Ed has provided, because we're struggling. The context. Okay, returning, what is images? Is that a function? Oh, no worries. I'm interested in just getting this working though. But there's no function with the name images. I don't know what that's doing. Huh. So I guess technically the require should actually work here, because the require does, if we look at the paths, so we'll log image paths there, and then we're logging images below. So this is line 9. So here, that's the image paths. And then we're bringing in the images, and it just says cannot find module assets images 200. So it's trying to require in that file. Webpack is, but it can't find it. I mean, technically the same thing to do is we could say import image from assets images 200.jpg. Like technically this should work. And then if we just log that, that's going to be like the path where it gets built to whenever Webpack compiles. Yeah, so notice how it gives us an actual built path. It's kind of what we want. Let's just look at Webpack dynamic import. Code splitting. Not quite. I want to be able to do an import on a not top level line of code. Yeah, so ultimately we can see what happens is Webpack renames it and puts it in a separate folder, and this is the path that we need to get, because we have the local file path, but by importing it, that gives us the built path, and that's what we need to actually reference it. Import.then. Oh, yeah, so it doesn't return a promise? That could do it. Yeah, somebody mentioned import.then earlier anyways. So let's do this. Images is initially an empty array, and then in here we're going to say this is going to be an async function where we will await promise.all of import. And then we're just, for now, we're going to see what we get back. Cannot find module / assets images 200 JPEG. Well, and hello, Exino, welcome. This was mentioning, oh, like the default export? Well, .keys gives us the path. Like, ultimately, you can see that, well, let me log it again. Because if we log image paths, that's technically the path that we want to import, right? So, we log it. I could literally take this path right here and import it, and it actually works, right? Because instead, if I do import image from that path, this one works. And then I actually get the built location of that image. See, that works beautifully. Use the Webpack context object. I mean, is Webpack context... All right, let's see what else we get with Webpack context. Because, yeah, maybe .keys isn't what we need. Do I need this for each R? What is this even doing? Is this actually importing them? So we have this function import all. We're gonna use this. Instead of this. I'm curious what this even, like, we're not, like, it technically works, right? Or no, keys.forEach is not a function? What? Oh, because I don't need to call .keys. I just need to call require.context. Yeah, and still technically we're importing that, but now how do I get access to the actual so this gives us a function, then we take, okay, I see. Because we take that function that got created, this context function, and we pass a particular path into it, which then imports it. That makes sense to me. So here's what we do. The context equals that. And then we can say images equals context.keys .map with the context. This is the winner, and I don't know why they don't have this example in their source code. And then we can just log the images. Whoa. Hey, why was that so hard to figure out? Why don't, like, look, this function in their docs literally does nothing. Like, it imports all of them, but it doesn't actually use them. Okay, we figured it out, though. Nice. So, we dynamically imported all the images in a folder. And it's because we're using this require context thing. So ultimately, this gives us back a function which can import things, but it also gives us all of the files in it. So basically, we look at all the file names, and then we import them. Step 1/2 done. Cool. All right, let me give some basic styles. I'm going to say app. Let's just do this. Column count 3. And then images have a width of 100%. Get a nice little layout like that. There we go. I guess I could do a two column count. There we go. Nice. Beautiful, beautiful arranged cats. So now we're at the point where when you hover over an image, we want to show some text. Did I get rid of my I don't know, kitten ipsum generator? I do go to work today. I'm late. I gotta leave right now. Make muffins. Yeah, so that, well, not only the alt text, we could add like a nice little overlay. So we need a function to get random kitten text. So we're gonna start off with that. I'm the real CJ. Hello, motivation. Welcome. So we want that. We want to split it on, I guess, spaces. And then, well, let's say this. Words equals that. And then result is an empty array. And then we just iterate. Let's say we want like 10 random words. I equals 0 all the way for I is less than 10. We're going to say result.push math.floor of math.random times words, not that, words.length. And this needs to be an index into the words array. Words at that. And then we're going to return result joined together on spaces. So this should give us 10 random kitten-related words. So let's say we have the images, and then we also have the titles. And so initially, titles is an empty array. We'll also set that to empty, because we'll say in here, this dot images equals images, and this dot titles equals titles, but we need to create titles. We'll do another for loop, because we need 10 different titles. No, we need images.length titles. That's what we need. So for I equals 0, while I is less than titles.length. No, not titles.length. Images. Images.length. This dot titles.push get random kitten text. Okay. So now, on our component state, we should have 10 random titles. And look at app, titles, string pass. So end of an unexpectedly keyboard piece play box. That's horrible. It doesn't work very well. Oh well, but we still get random words. Yeah. Yeah. I work for a dev company. Will the real CJ please stand up? We could do that too. AI done. Okay. Regardless, now what we want to happen is whenever we hover over an image, we want to show that title on the image. So for that, I'm actually gonna like style things a little bit differently. Let's actually have like a div. I'm not gonna stand up. The class here is just like with title. It'll have an image inside of it, and we're actually gonna repeat this div for every image. Dang it. Take a good stretch. No, I'm just gonna do this and then I gotta go. Subtitle-y with title. Let's call it hover title, the class. Image in images. and we'll move the key to the div. So it still works in the same way, but now since we have that wrapper div, we can position some text on top of the image. So here's what I want to do. I'm going to have just like a p tag that has titles at that particular index. So we're going to iterate image and I. Do I need let right there? How do we get access to the index? Oh, it's never used. Okay, so now we'll show that particular title underneath the image. Cool. However, by default, we want that text to be hidden. And we also want it to be maybe like centered on top of the image. So basically, we have each image. We have some text associated with it, but let's apply some styles to it. Yeah, so a mouse over thing for sure. So I'm going to say this. By default, hover title P is hidden. So we're going to say, and also let's give us some decent fonts. Font family, sans serif, all that good stuff. So we're going to say by default, the class with hover title, and then any paragraphs inside of that, display none. They're gone. So we don't show them. And then on hover, we want to be able to show them. So I mean, actually, you could technically just do this with CSS. So I could say hover title, hover, display block. So now when I hover, the text shows up, right? But we want it to show up on top of the image. So for that, we'll just use some absolute positioning. So I'm actually going to say the hover title has position relative, because it's the parent container, so position relative. And then I'll say the hover title P has position absolute. And we can say like top 0. So the text should appear on top of the image at the top. Look at that. We can also change the color to be white. So now we have white text. We could also give it some padding, like 1 rem. So it's a little bit off from the image. Now it's like nice and inside of the image. We could also make it so that when we hover, we also show like an opaque dark, yeah, like change the background of it. And give it a border. Yeah, but ultimately we're doing it all with CSS. So I would actually do this though. I mean, because technically the P tag could take up 100% width and 100% height. Let's do that. So by default, the P tag has a width of 100% and a height of 100%. So it should take up the full image. And right now, let me just do background black. Yeah, so now when we hover it, it just shows a black image. Though the padding is like throwing off the coloring. We might need border box. Is that what's happening? Yeah, I just wanted to show that we're getting this black overlay, then we're going to make it have some like opacity. And I'm curious why the top of it is not being covered. Let's try to see what that is. So I could say, so this is a cool little trick in the CSS DevTools. If you click an element, you can actually force it to have a hover state. So that way you can then debug some things. So if we look at it, that's the image. Oh, is that default image padding? Oh no, that's default margins on the paragraph tag. Yeah. So I could just turn off all padding and margin on everything. There we go. So now when we hover it, it covers the entire image. What we could do is actually put the title inside of like a nested, like technically we could make this thing a div, and then inside of it there's like a span, which is what we're gonna style, that has the text inside of it, but that way that div is the container. So now instead of p we use div to have all of these properties. But then we could say that the span has some padding. So hover title div span, that give that some padding, so that way it doesn't affect everything else. Cool. And now instead of background black, we can do like RGBA, like half black, like that. Look at that. Right now we're just using CSS. We can increase this margin like a bunch though, like 2 rems, then it's in a little bit more. 10 rem? Oh, it looks like because it is a span, we'll actually display it inline block. Yeah, then it does that. So I'll do like 4 rem. There you go. We could also increase the font size. There we go. Keyboard. Oh, then to running up, be kitty dance. Yeah, so we do need to fix that. There's a bottom hover. You can notice that like it's overlapping a little bit. Text. Yeah, we could flexbox it if we really wanted to. Instead of just doing like padding here, we could say that this div has a display flex, justify content center, align items center, and then the span would also have a text align of center. And that at least does that. Though, we need to probably hide the span. Why did that just happen? Oh, because it has display none. I see. So whenever we hover, we want to change it. Instead of display block, we're going to change it to display flex. There we go. So now the text is in the middle. We could, if we add padding, that's going to like make it nice and centered even more. So if we take the padding 1 rem. Yeah. Though we're still getting that little bit of overlap on the bottom. Let me see what that's coming from. So we're going to take the parent, we're going to force a hover, and then if we look at the image, that's there, but if we look at the div, it's overlapping, so it's a little bit 328.5 by 496.75, and this one's 320 by what's the same? Shouldn't I go to work instead of playing with margins? Yeah, probably. You make a point here. I don't know. Image height. Oh yeah, that might actually be it. I don't know. Cause then we could add some spacing between the images. But I'm not. Yeah. Well, the height actually needs to be made. Auto. I don't know. I'm not gonna worry about it though. But we can use a transition. So instead of changing the display property from none, we can say visibility is hidden, and then on hover you have visibility visible. So now it still works in the same way, but the element's still there, but that way we can actually fade it into existence. So right here I'm just going to do transition all 2 seconds linear. Yeah, it takes a while to fade out. We actually should also make, let's say like the opacity is 0, and then the opacity goes to 1 whenever it's visible. And it's going to take 2 seconds to get there. So on hover, it shows up, and then it disappears. I mean, we can, let's, instead of 2 seconds, probably like 500 milliseconds is the way to go. So look at that. Look at that. It's so beautiful. Look at this. This is amazing. Fade into existence. One thing that's happening though is the text is like getting shooting up to the top whenever it disappears. That's probably because display. Oh no, we need it to always be display flex. That's why we shouldn't change the display flex anymore. All right, my keyboard is broken. Fire, yeah, this is like probably the best kitten overlay website you've ever seen in your whole life. Okay, yeah, and that keeping it as display flex fixed that. that's a bad one. It's a feature. Yeah, this is the best one you've ever seen. Regardless of if it's the only one you've ever known, it's the best one you've ever seen. Yeah, I'll push this up to GitHub and I'll put a link in the description afterwards. Okay, so is Mr. Daniel Schiffman streaming right now, or is he going to be live soon? Coding Train is live 8 minutes ago. Nice. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a YouTube raid. This is not an official thing, and there's no way to actually... no way to do it. You just have to go there. But Coding Train is streaming on YouTube right now. So we're all going to head over there and raid him. Not yet. Don't go yet. We're going to do it together. So first we need our raid message. So this is it. So copy and paste that message. Actually, just to make sure it works on YouTube. So copy and paste that message on YouTube. This is our Coding Garden message. And actually, no, let's do this. Let's say Coding Garden raid with that message. Like that. Copy and paste that. Here, I'll put this one on Twitch too. So if you're copying and pasting from here, I think you need to make sure that there's a space. Yeah, Coding Garden raid. Nice. I'll tell you in a second. I'll tell you when to go. But just copy the message so we're ready. Is everyone ready? Give me a thumbs up in the chat if you're ready. Oh, you lost the link? Okay. Let me copy it. We're gonna basically I'm gonna count down, and then we're gonna click this link whenever we count down. Okay, if you can't copy it, that's fine. Just say Coding Garden. You can type Coding Garden raid in the live chat. Oh, there's already some people doing a Coding Garden raid. All right, we have to go, but this sounds good. There's the link. Click it. We're gonna raid the Coding Train. It's gonna be fun. And be nice. Be nice to each other. See you there. All right. Wherever you are in the world, have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or night. Until next time, here's this.